Hi, Craig.
Oh, okay. He is here. It sounded like he left.
No, that was Geark. Turns out Geark actually has been showing up. He just sneaks in behind Greg, and then does something with his hands. I can't tell what he's doing, and then he just jumps out the window. It's very
He's
weird.
he's likely testing a new spell that only has was it somatic components? That's the ones. That's the ones where you just move your hands, right?
Well, maybe he's actually casting a spell, and he's just not saying the verbal because he doesn't speak. He just looks at us with this broken weird eye and
Yeah. He would be a pretty awful wizard if all he
oh
could
yeah.
do is somatic components. I mean, I guess he could add in material, but if he doesn't talk,
I mean that's why there's no deaf wizards.
that's fair. Hey, could you imagine being a bard who's a mute?
I mean,
I mean,
you
I
could
guess you
definitely you
could
could
because you could play instruments, so I guess it would work.
yeah, let's just say you can play instruments, and wasn't Beethoven deaf?
Yeah, yeah. He
Yeah,
well, he didn't. I don't believe Beethoven started deaf though. He went deaf.
yeah. Um, but yeah,
I'm definitely no expert on Beethoven.
or how to live with muteness. I
Yeah,
mean,
or
I
that.
I guess American Sign Language is pretty much just telepathic communication with
Well,
somatic movements.
yeah, that's fair. Well, I mean, well, the Dark Elves, in at least in Forgotten Realm, those Dark Elves have an entire language that's nothing but hand signals.
How do they see it? It's in the dark.
Oh, well, every one of them has 120-foot dark vision. They see, yeah, they can see movement.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into the specifics of sign language with drows in the Underdark. That's just weird.
Well, I mean, it's in all of the novels. Every single one of the novels about dark elves, they're all doing the hand signs, talking to each other. It's always been a thing, which makes me wonder why they don't actually have that as a learnable language in 5e.
Hmm.
Like every dark elf should start with speaking under common and that.
So it's just like a specific drow's thief can.
Mhm. Yep, and every one of them knows it.
Yeah, guess that works.
Yeah.
All right, so on to some real topics then.
What are you talking about? This is a real topic. We're talking lore. It's the most important thing about Dungeons and Dragons.
The most important thing about Dungeons and Dragons is having a good time with your friends. Okay.
That's part of it, I guess.
Okay. Have you ever had a party or a group of people that was so enamored with completing a campaign that y'all went out and got tattoos with each other?
I can't say I've ever done that. No, nor have
Yeah.
I known anyone who did that.
So there's a Reddit post asking the same question. Specifically, it's been up for a little while, and they asked that question about, "Hey, did you ever anyone get tattoos after they finish a campaign?" And no one's replied. So either no one has ever thought of doing this and actually doing it, or no one that's never crossed anybody's mind to get a tattoo post campaign. Now, if I were to change the question to, have you ever gotten anything for your D&D party to commemorate the end of a campaign session, then I would definitely say yes, because I did that, with my
Yeah.
Fandelver campaign. I know people
We,
have gotten mugs. You can go to Etsy and buy mugs and stuff like that. That hey, Waterdeep's completed, and you can have characters' names on it and cross the ones that died and everything.
yeah, I have never done that. Any of that. Like when a campaign's over. We had a good time. Hey, let's start the next one. But I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you complete a task, especially with a campaign, I mean, some of it could take years.
yeah,
So that is a bit of an achievement, especially if you manage to complete it.
yeah. It's true.
I kind of like the idea of a tattoo, though, man. That's hardcore. That shows devotion to that campaign. I mean, yeah. My problem with this because we ran the very high level campaign, started in third edition, went to fifth edition. We're 30th level when it wrapped up. We're probably going back to those same characters here pretty soon. So if I got a tattoo, it would literally just be Robert Downey Jr. because that's exactly what my character looks like. I'd have Robert Downey Jr.'s face tattooed on my butt, and yep.
I'm sure he would enjoy knowing that.
I mean, if I ever saw him at Comic-Con or something, I'd have to show him.
Hey, bro. Hey, Robert. Check out my ass. It's got your face on it. Can
Yep.
you sign it? I'll go get it. I'll go get that tattooed on it.
Yeah. I'd do that. Honestly, if I had a picture of Robert Downey Jr. on my ass and he signed it, I would absolutely go get that tattooed on there.
I thought about getting or my wife thought about getting me a really cool mug for the end of our Tomb of Horrors run or Tomb of Annihilation run.
Mm.
But she couldn't remember all the characters that had died, so she didn't get it. But I'm like, that would have been really cool. I thought about doing something for the end of the Owl campaign,
Yeah.
Maybe commission a work again or something, or like buy all the figures of the characters as they ended the campaign,
Yeah.
And speaking of that, real quick, we'll have to talk about what happened later, but the Owl campaign has one more session remaining, and then it's done.
Getting close.
The finale is next weekend, next Saturday.
So anyone who's around, make sure to tune in.
Doubly make sure you're there, because I definitely need to see high numbers.
Yeah.
A lot of viewership. Come on, it'll be fun.
Yep.
Trust me.
Twitch.tv// Grumpy Dungeon Masters. I think I got that right.
Yes,
I'm not really our pitch man for that kind of stuff, so.
No, you're not.
I think we have a Instagram or TikTok or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's going to be fun to do. But, I definitely have to do something for that, because that's the first homebrew that I completed.
Yeah.
And then I got to start real work on that and actually get that all published out and everything.
Welcome to the world of the homebrew. I'm glad you finally joined most of us.
It wasn't any different, though. That's, I created a lot of custom characters and custom NPCs, but that stuff was like, I don't know. That wasn't, not that it wasn't extremely fulfilling. It was just that like, I could have made this PC or this NPC, or I could have just had an NPC do this for me from the book. It would have been the same thing for me,
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe it's because when I run a campaign, because I let my players literally do anything they want. Okay, I wind up fucking doing everything different, anyways.
Right.
Trying to keep Waterdeep on track was one of the hardest experiences I've still ever had. Frostmane was much easier because it was just like, oh, they're going here to kill everybody. Okay, well, they'll probably kill all the good people instead of the bad people. And okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah, you figured that out pretty quickly with that one. You were the bad guys. That's how that went. Now with the Owl campaign though, it is still set in the Forgotten Realms setting, even though it's in the Feywild.
So I had to change that because I originally wanted it to be in the Fey domain. I was like in the Fey realm, and since they came out with Witchlight and that free PDF you can get from DM's Guild, there's no longer a Fey domain or the Feywild. There's just different Fey domains that exist, and they're all different. They all have their own different rules and different.
What you're telling me is the Feywild is broken up into other domains, but the Feywild still is a thing.
I don't think so.
I mean, think of the Feywild as the United States, and you're running a campaign in Mississippi or Georgia or wherever.
Yeah, so like Queen Titania still exists, but what she rules over in the Feywild previously is now just her domain.
Sure,
but it's not interconnected with like the Isles of Dread. The Isles of Dread are their own domain now, and you'd have to find a Fey passageway to cross between one to the other.
Yeah,
because the Isles of Dread actually, I think, fall under the domain structure for Van Richten.
Sure, yeah, but the point is that still exists. The Isles of Dread, I guess, were always a domain, but the Feywild is the Feywild.
The Feywild, like if you Google and you find the map for the Feywild, that no longer exists. It's been broken up into its own separate domains. So you can find a map, maybe in the future, of Queen Titania's Feywild domain, but it won't include everything that's in the Feywild map right now. unless it's current part of her domain. So the giant massive forest that kind of separates like the City of Gold and the other huge elven settlements that exist in the Feywild, that forest like doesn't really exist anymore. And that's where I'd put Glide Sky Roost. Looks like right in the dead center of that. So like that's not there anymore. It's been broken up in different areas. So essentially what I had to do is I had to take what I wanted to do with Glide Sky Roost being in the center of that forest and basically make it its own domain that has a lot of like external passageways from other Feywild domains that connect up to the Glide Sky domain. And in the Glide Sky domain, there's like the really nice bathhouse, and like there's a nice big fancy woods where you can travel and hunt and do game stuff like that. And had to really change the story around mid campaign to kind of like work with the idea that it's a domain.
Right. But
And
that domain lies somewhere within the Feywild.
no,
So you're just saying that the Feywild is only another domain that Titania rules.
yes,
Okay. Well, that's weird, and I don't think anyone's going to like that. But all right.
and that's how it all works now. That's the same thing with like Ravenloft. Ravenloft is its own domain.
So is Faerun not a world? I mean,
No, it is.
Is
Faerun.
Faerun just a domain now? Like none of it makes sense.
Faerun is a planet in the material plane.
Well, okay, Faerun is probably the wrong choice. Stygia. Well, Stygia is just one of the layers of hell. Hell itself, is it just a domain now? Like,
No, that would be part of the planescape.
right.
The
So
domain,
The Feywild was always a plane.
and now it's just domains.
Yeah, I'm still gonna not. I still don't think that's gonna be the case. I think Feywild is still a plane with a whole lot of domains in it. But
Even
I'll
if that was the case, even if that was the way it was, everything is still just domains in that little bubble over there, in that
sure,
layer.
yeah, but the plane that holds all of those domains is the Feywild.
It would just be the Fey.
Uh, well, it had always been listed in the at least in third edition. It was the Feywild.
Yeah. No, everything I knew came from fourth, where it was just like, okay, this is the Feywild. It's a planescape. It's just a plane that you can go to and travel around. It's got its own world. Here's the world map. Here are the different areas in it. And now it's like, oh no, that's all broken up down in different domains.
Yeah, I really don't think they changed much with that. Like it had always had its own little rulers. One ruler ruled this section, one ruler ruled this section. That was nothing new. I don't think they ever detailed it out as domains, and that's new. But
Yeah.
as the plane itself isn't really any different. They've just detailed what's there a little more.
They're just trying to make it easier for DMs to craft up their own domain without having to tie in like Titania and all the other crap that goes on with it.
Yeah,
They're definitely trying to detach themselves from previous lore because, you know, it gets really hard after a while to maintain all that, and you have people who are just hired to maintain all that history together. But I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that they maintain everything and keep going with it and just building on other things. Eventually the stuff that's really old from second edition just becomes like almost like legends, and no
mhm.
one's going to remember how it worked or how it was,
Yeah, I mean,
and
all the stuff that was written in those first books, which I guess technically was first edition. It was right at the tail end of first edition when Forgotten Realms came out.
yeah,
Like I still have the books. A lot of the information is still useful, but the timeline is way later at this point. So
yeah,
everything that's going on now is a couple hundred years later or some such.
right. And which is why, like, I really don't like when they say that, oh, none of that matters anymore. The DM gets to create his own world for each thing. It matters to a lot of DMs. It matters to me as a DM that stuff was there in the past,
Oh yeah.
Like, I need to be able to go and reference that stuff if I care to. But if not, then I won't.
Yeah. I mean, you can always run a campaign of your own design that doesn't touch hardly any of the lore. Yeah,
Yeah,
I could run one in Anarok, which is the Great Desert. I could just run a campaign that never leaves that area, and it could even be just a tiny little area somewhere in the Anarok that never touches a piece of lore other than who the deities are.
yeah. So like I don't need that broken out into like its own separate domain. Then in the future, I don't need Faerun split into multiple areas. You know, I mean, granted, the Sword Coast is a really nice area. It's very laid out with a lot of books, but that's all we know of Faerun. Everything else is the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we've all seen the meme. It's not wrong, unfortunately, at least with fifth edition. Fortunately, there is still a lot of lore from earlier editions. So if you really want to run stuff in other places, you can just go. I think there's the Forgotten Realm wiki, which has just tons and tons of information.
Yeah. And overall, they just kind of needed just to keep kind of going with that and just like letting it all build out and become bigger and grander. And granted, like if you never touch anything that's not on the Sword Coast ever again, that's fine. Just give us the players, or the DMs, I guess, some information about those areas and how they currently are standing. Even just a couple of blurbs, and we'll take it from there. That's why I found some place other than Icewind Dale to set the Christmas one shot. Found a place that's always like almost always winter,
Yep.
and kind of base it there. And it's only a couple of books, but it was just like paragraphs of information, and that was enough for me to root everything in there fine. That it made sense, and then I just went on from there. That's really all we need, which is why the wiki is so good. But when you come out and claim that none of that stuff is real anymore, it just makes everything sour at that point in time, which is just dumb. They should just
Yeah.
embrace it and keep going. It's like, hey, whatever's in the wiki is fine. I know we don't own it, but that's pretty much all accurate because that's how that Wikipedia
Yeah, but
works.
they won't do that because
No,
they
yeah, I
don't.
know they won't.
Because anybody can update these wikis and they have no control over that.
No,
Uh,
I mean, the whole purpose of the wiki is that there is control over the data that gets updated.
yeah, I don't know who owns the wiki though. I don't think it's WotC.
Fandom, fandom
Uh,
owns it.
right. So they have no control over what's entered there. They definitely wouldn't say, "Hey, that's all canon." Uh,
No, I mean, but it's based off of a Wikipedia entry like it is in Wikipedia. It's
yeah.
still built on the same platform. So in order to post anything on there, you have to list your reference material.
Oh,
And
sure. Yeah, yeah.
if it doesn't think well in the database and then the admin approves it, that's on the admin, but it still goes through a review process to get added in.
Right. It goes through all of that, but it doesn't go through WotC.
Yeah.
uh, back to the sword case thing. I still can't understand why Sword Coast is so important. First edition with Forgotten Realms first came out. Sword Coast, there was a few things that mattered there, Baldur's Gate and so forth, but it was kind of minor. Like Core Mirror, which is the kingdom to the east, was way more central and important, especially to the early novels. Hills Far, the Sea of Stars, I think is what it's called. Like that area was where most things were set. So I honestly, it was probably because of the damn Baldur's Gate video game that came out that sort of ruined everything for us. Damn you, Baldur's Gate! Not the new one, the OG one back in the '90s. It was probably at that point that they started sort of moving things towards Sword Coast.
I think it's easier too, because a lot of it's easier to you have something on the coast and you have like a bunch of major cities along
Yeah,
the
but you had
coastline.
the Sea of Fallen Stars is like there are many cities there that there's tons of history there. The Fire Knives are a major organization down in that area. Like there's so many powerful groups and stories in that area. And
Yeah, I'm looking at that, but that sea is contained on mostly every side with land.
yeah, but
Whereas,
I mean that's a large area. That's like the Mediterranean.
yeah, when we look at the Sword Coast, we have this map. Like half the map is just the ocean.
Well, the
All
Sword
right,
Coast is I mean technically the Sword Coast is only the northern portion of it.
right, but most of it's still an ocean. Okay, and then you have all the major cities that people know of from a branding standpoint, like Waterdeep and Neverwinter and Icewind Dale. They're all there, you know. And then like you have trade that can come in and out to any kind of like area almost immediately, you know. because they're
Yeah.
all on the coastline. So your options for creating characters can really be anything. You could be a farmer from on the east side of the map, or you could be a sailor from the west side of the map. You could be a fisherman, or really anything. But when you kind of look at the sea, you have the same options, but you're kind of like, right, well, which city around the sea did you come from?
Well, I mean,
That's just
there's
my guess.
yeah, I mean they use a few of them in the, but the primary ones you'll ever see though are like Luskan, Neverwinter, literally the major ones right on the coast, Waterdeep and
Yeah,
Baldur's Gate. And the stuff that once you start moving inland just a little bit, they don't ever touch it.
no.
Um, I know the High Moor, they use that in one of the Driss novels. Uh, Daggerford actually was important in the early days.
Daggerford was the 5e beta. It was built on when that packet they handed out, like the intro story for that was built in Daggerford.
I mean,
I actually
go ahead.
I actually took all that data that they had for Daggerford. Since you can still find it, you just got to find the original beta test for 5th edition.
Yeah.
Um, and you had the city, you had the layout, you had all the maps and stuff like that. So I turned Daggerford into basically what I wanted. The crap, what was the saltwater campaign?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Salt Marsh.
Salt Marsh. I based that in Daggerford because of that, and it just
Okay.
made sense.
Yeah, but I'm
It
just
kind of
looking. You because
it
Longsaddle
meshed.
and Daggerford, they were both mentioned, I think, in one of the earliest Driss novels.
Yeah,
But that's
I mean,
about
there's
it.
there's a lot that goes on. Like Daggerford, even though it's just a small dot on the map, there's a lot that happens there. There's like the Red Wizards of Thane show up there, which really is the only thing that's not Sword Coast in 5th edition right now.
Yeah, yeah. They don't.
Um,
I'm looking at the Forgotten Realms quote unquote map, and they like the area the Red Wizards come from is not even on here.
yeah,
So I mean, obviously, it's not a full map because they have mapped that area out before. But
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and I can understand that the frustration trying to deal with all that data and trying to make it work. But at the end of the day, I think it's
I mean,
good. I think it should
it
work.
it's not hard though. Like all they have to do is create a book, and this book would sell very well. It's the 2022 edition of Forgotten Realms lore, whatever the hell you want to call it. And you don't even have to give every single town or city on here, but the ones that matter, just put, like you said, one paragraph about where things are at the time, maybe a couple of names, and that's it. Like
Yeah,
you've got, I'm sitting here, look, the ruins of Zental Keep, the Moon Sea, the Sea of Fallen Stars. There's tons and tons of cities. Alagon, Westgate. Westgate was huge in the earlier editions. Sembia, like these are major places that there's literally nothing at all from 5e on. Nothing.
yeah,
And if you write one damn paragraph talking about these places, that will make people so much happier.
yeah. Oh, definitely. Hell, I mean, I complained about this last year, where like I just want to know what the hell happened to the end of the campaigns. What the hell? What is the actual ending to Waterdeep? What is the
I'm not
actual
sure.
ending
I
to those
I would love
caves?
to see that, but I think they're probably holding that off for once sixth edition. Then they can just write their. I know they're never going to do a whole here's what happened, but with sixth edition they can just pick up, and you can sort of see where things went.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, but when you read, if you go through and you do like the end of the 4th edition Neverwinter campaign stuff, and you have the war with the gods, and you have the spell plague, and all that stuff that happens, they tell you definitively what happens at the end of 4th edition. So I wouldn't mind that at the end of 5th edition, but I kind of want to like them just to stay in 5th edition and just keep putting out more books. Just like, okay, this is 10 years of 5th edition. Here's the update of what's happened. And this is how we're going to keep on going. Give us that book that says, hey, the ice maiden was defeated. It's no longer ramen up there. Um, the one city was kept in hell. Baldur's Gate was freed though of demonic influence, and Candlekeep is still just a place everyone goes to burn candles.
Damn candles. Uh, it's it is interesting because they've made the change when they stopped writing novels. And we've looked this up before.
I
I know we've
hate,
talked about it on that, but the fact that
yeah,
there haven't been any novels in almost a decade, I think.
yeah, yeah,
And at that point, the world only changes through the modules, the campaigns that they release, where it used to be very much the other way. In early editions, they would release novels, and then they would also release modules that you could, if you had 4 modules in order, that was effectively a campaign. But those campaigns never changed anything. Whatever
yeah,
happened in those, it was very much in that little campaign, and it didn't change anything in the lore or the overarching world. But it was always the novels that changed the world. Now there are no novels, although they are coming out with some Dragonlance ones apparently in the next year or two. But without
yeah,
those novels, this it only changes when they write up a campaign of it, and it's impossible to get closure that way
yeah.
unless they do what you're talking about at some point and actually just write up a synopsis of where everything went. I don't see that happening though.
Yeah, I think a lot of it changed too, and this is just my guess, is that this the breaking of the novels and the updating of like the overall lore of Dungeons and Dragons, Faerun in particular, seemed to end once Mike Mearls left in 2018.
Mm.
Because like they were continuing it and going on and building on everything, and he led everything from like third to fourth, and then it all seemed to flow, and there was finality built into those books.
Yeah.
But then like after fourth edition, and once, which is about the same time Mike Mearls left, once fifth edition had started and a couple books came out, he left because of creative differences. I wonder if like that is part of,
That was probably some of it. Yeah.
yeah, probably some of it.
Yeah, the only
Um,
novels we get at all anymore is the stuff written by R.A. Salvatore, and that's
yeah,
it's. I'm sure they're good novels, but it's such a limited amount. It's
yeah.
not going to really change a whole lot in the storylines, and
One thing,
everything that he would be writing would be approved, via
right?
WotC.
Probably not, because it's just all dritz.
Well, it's all about Drist. It always is and will be, but it's still he can't say that oh this city blew up without getting approval.
I mean, why not?
Because I'm sure they have a 10-year plan as to where everything goes.
I don't think they do.
I think they do.
I honestly don't.
Well, it's probably not a 10-year plan, but they are definitely thinking from one module to the next at this point. When they first
I
took
I
over, they weren't.
I think they're about 3 to 5 years ahead, and that all their planning of that is just like what books we want to read out,
Yes.
release, and in what theme. I don't think they have a 10-year plan or even a 5-year plan for the lore.
No.
Unlike
No. No.
WoW used to be, they used to have a huge 10-year plan for the lore and like where they wanted to go, what they wanted to happen. Like Deathwing coming back, that was always planned, and the whole thing with Sargeras always planned. And then like everything they did in the game supported that ongoing lore discussion. Everything that happened in the book supported that ongoing lore discussion. But with all those creative heads left Blizzard, they had a collapse of the lore maintaining itself.
Hmm.
So now if you try to play World of Warcraft, you have to have read the novelization that comes out before the expansion to understand what happened behind the scenes with the key players, because you're going to meet them in the game and not know why the fuck they're there, you know, because they're not showing it in the game anymore. And then they also try to release a bunch of lore books, and because the creative team left at the end of the third one, they refused to release anymore and started retconning the stuff that came out in the first 2 books because the creative team was different. And they felt handcuffed, quote unquote, by the original writings.
Right.
And they wanted to expand the universe and make it bigger, so they had to fudge things around. So now the Eternals, or not the Eternals, but the immortal god pantheon of gods that they have now are just like a small sect of gods, of a group of gods, and they all meet for tea every Sunday and some dumb shit. You know, they've taken their lore, which is like carefully crafted and built upon over decades, and went, well, buy this book if you want to know what happens. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll buy the book. Because, like, literally, there's a character introduced in one of the books, okay, who just shows up in the game and saves everybody with no explanation of who she is, why she's there, or why she has this massive power to save everybody. And then the players aren't given any explanation. Even when you talk to her, she's like, "Ah, champion, you're here. I'm glad you're still alive. Thank you.
Yeah, so
Bye."
you get the quest and the quest NPC.
It's I understand that it's a massive undertaking to keep the lore going,
Here's
but
the
like
thing.
they
Here's the
need to
thing
do
though.
that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, they need to. You can they have access to the wiki. They can get access to every book that's ever been printed.
Hmm.
This information hasn't gone away. You know, while compiling it for themselves might be difficult, the wiki should be correct or at least very close to it. So if you're going to write something about an area, you should be able to look at the wiki and get an idea of where things were last. At
Hmm.
least I would hope so. Yeah, at the very least, there are enough people out there who understand this lore from beginning to end.
Yeah.
You utilize those people or whatever you have to do to make things work in tandem. If you're not sure, then write something about a place that nobody else has ever touched. I think they're
And
stuck. I think they're just stuck in this Horde Coast because they knew where everything was at when they took over, and
yeah.
they didn't want to leave that. They're afraid to go anywhere else.
Yeah. Um but the other side of the coin too is, hey, if you go to the wiki, it's I'm going to be generous and say it's 95% correct. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
You're not going to find much stuff wrong there. Um I haven't found any.
And if it
You know.
has access, I mean, if it's got the references like it's supposed to, then you can go to
Yeah.
those references and
Yeah,
verify.
exactly. Um and I know businesses know that there are more people out there that know more about the lore than they do.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and they know that those people will, or some of them will, go to the wiki and update that to make sure everything is correct on there. Okay. It's almost like they rely on those people and their free labor to keep the wiki going and running. I mean,
I mean,
Wikipedia by itself is like run mostly by one guy who just makes sure everything is correct and updates a million articles a year or some
yeah.
insane amount of stuff. I'm sure there are people who are like that with Dungeons and Dragons who are doing that right now. And like I said, I don't think things are really incorrect on that site, and you could pretty much just go there and get all the data. So why would they come in and hire people to do that thing that's already being done for free?
Yeah. I mean, maybe hire a guy to sort of be the keeper of said lore. Yeah, and
Well, I
just
mean that is
but
um,
it's not like they're releasing that many books every year.
that is the creative director's job, which
Right.
is either Jerry Crawford or Chris Metzen, not Chris Metzen, but Chris Perkins. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of those guys.
Yeah. Either way, they have somebody to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Chris Metzen, I really am waiting for Ouroboros to come out. I really want to start playing that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Because that was you already bought the Kickstarter for that a while back.
Yeah, and they're making it. It's worldwide shipping problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a while. Like I kickstarted the one from the Dragonlance
So
creators.
so did I. I actually went back and did the whole thing.
Oh, good, good. But that's going to be probably next year before we ever see that. I
Maybe
know.
that too.
I think I remember reading the thing. I think they're in the process of getting it all done. It should be coming together by later this year. Then you'll be able to verify your address and all that stuff. Probably get it early next, like around Christmas time, maybe.
Maybe
That'd be a hell of a Christmas present. I'd be glad to see that.
Sky Raiders of
Yeah, Sky Raiders.
Abarix, Abraxas.
Yeah, Braxis. I can't ever remember the name of it, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I we haven't seen an update in a while. But of course, I get those, and I kind of just like ignore them and just move on.
Yeah, same. I get a lot of updates from the 5e advanced 5e guys though, like about one a week.
Oh yeah, yeah. I ordered a set of mystery dice from a guy on Kickstarter
Oh, okay.
in 2016.
Oh God, did you finally get them, or did you
No,
just get an update?
we get updates like every month. He sends out an update.
Okay, that's
You
a
know, it's
that is quite a while to be waiting on a
yeah.
Kickstarter.
I'm not a fan of Kickstarter at the end of the day. I really am not, because I don't get the stuff that I've paid for. You know, or it comes so far in the future that I forget all about it, and like the want to play for it is gone. Like I got the Ghostbusters. I Kickstarted the Ghostbusters like Zombicide game that they had,
Mhm.
and then like moved to Charleston. So what the fuck am I gonna do with it now? I have no friends to play this game with, and it arrived at my desk, my doorstep. It's just, eh,
I mean,
it's
it's a collector's thing, or you can sell it, whatever.
yeah. But no, I
I
still
love.
want to play it. But it's it's one of those games that's just so complicated. You have to spend an hour learning the rules before you can play
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I own a couple of zombie side games. They're not that difficult, but you would still want to read through the rules. Takes a little bit of
Yeah,
time, and honestly, the zombie side games they're the most fun if you have 5 or 6 people.
yeah. So, but with the Sky Raiders and Ouroboros, like those are just reference materials. I can do whatever I want. It's always going to work in the future.
Yeah,
I definitely want to do an Ouroboros stream, like during the week, like maybe on like a Wednesday or something like that, and get
that could be fun.
people in and play that game. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the
Um,
the the Sky Raiders one, there were two primary reasons I backed it. One is the fact of who the creators were behind it, because my love for Dragonlance and that
mhm.
group. And two is the fact that it's 5e steampunk sort of. And I we have friends who detest steampunk, but I don't mind it. I kind of like it, and it's going to give me more stuff to play around with. Even if I never actually play the Sky Raiders thing, I could still utilize components from it for my own campaigns.
I got it because it had a very Final Fantasy vibe to it, and
Mhm.
I like that vibe a lot, and kind of would like to make something that kind of follows that vibe. You
Yeah.
know, very Final Fantasy inspired kind of campaign.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll come out soon enough. I hope, and I'm really hoping Metzen, being the creative lead behind Warcraft for 3 decades. I really hope his next creation that he did from high school that he's been sitting on and mulling in the back of his head
Yeah.
for decades actually is really, really, really good and has a lot of really cool stuff with it. And I can write stuff for them. And they can hire me, and I
Hey,
can retire being a writer and
that'd
not
be
have to do my
cool.
normal day job.
I mean, you follow the guy pretty well. You know a lot about the World of Warcraft lore, so maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe.
Uh, So, God, we've been on this topic forever. Moving on, finally, getting away from the Forgotten Realms and all that fun stuff. You had pointed out the Jubilex mini from WizKids to me, so I've been sharing that to all of my friends. I love Jubilex. I'm sorry, he is just the coolest demon out there, in my opinion. And
and I told you this, and I've told everyone this. It's like, why did WizKids choose this mini of all minis they could make to do a premium figure of? Okay, two, it looks fucking amazing.
oh
Don't
yeah,
not doubting that at all. But like, why this guy? He's not in any official 5e content, so no one has a reason to purchase him.
he
But
is.
then like
Yeah,
all,
no.
but then
He is in official 5e content.
he's in the book. He has stats. I mean, he's not in the campaign
That's
story.
official. That's fair. But he is in that book. He is, he has stats.
He has stats assigned to him. That's not what I meant. He's not like in a story. He's not a central thing. He doesn't even show up anywhere. He's not referenced anywhere but just Mordenkainen's dumb tome of foes.
What if
And
Jubilex was behind everything that's going on? All of the campaigns are because of
no,
him.
but what I want to say is like I was very confused as to why they chose Jubilex. And just kind of random, they flip the pages and like, oh, Jubilex, let's do a figure for that. Because like it's irrelevant because no one No one is using him. And then the second I proclaimed that and said those words into the universe woke up, put on its slippers, pulled out a billy club. It's like, oh, I'm going to show this kid. And now every single person that I talk to is like, no, man, Jubilex is the main villain of my homebrew campaign. What are you talking about? You're like, no, I love Jubilex. Jubilex is the best thing ever. I'm just like, fucking how? I mean, it's already $70 on Big Bad Toy Store right now.
Well, it's retail is $70.
Yeah.
The pre-order is $70.
I mean, I've seen the figure out of the box, held it in my hand, and looked at it. It is freaking rad. It really is. Like, I kind of want to pick him up because he's just so cool to look at, you know?
Yeah.
But I'll never use this mini. Never, ever.
Now,
He's
see, that's
82 on Amazon.
okay. Well, that's where me and you differ. If I bought him, I would use him. Like around at Christmas time, one of my players bought me an adult blue dragon mini, and I don't use dragons a lot. I really kind of conserve them, but at some point, that damn mini is getting used.
Yeah.
And I barely even use minis at all, but I'm gonna find a point to use that guy.
Well, the problem with Jubilex, the same problem I had when I bought my Orcus figure. He's an end boss. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
you want to get the end, you want to get to the end of the game so you can use your Orcus figure, but you can't pull out Orcus on a team of level 5s and
No.
hope they survive. I mean, I did do that for a one shot, but it was very different.
Yeah, and truthfully, with Jubilex or something like that, it might be a one shot where I run and use him. It would probably be a one time ever thing where I get to use that mini, but it's just one of
That
those.
that would be how the one shot would be is like you have like a little vial of ooze that's like been sealed and sealed over and over again, and the whole one shot is you having to transport this thing to a priest, and the priest gets it after all like this huge one shot goes on. He's like, oh, finally. And he just shatters it on the ground and Jubilex appears.
Just
Like,
immediately consumes him and starts killing everything.
um, I looked up Jubilex on Amazon and I went through and they said you may also like this, and I picked the premium Orcus figure
Mhm.
and just taking a look at it. It looks so much more badass than my figure of Orcus. It's like the same problem I have with the Tiamat figure that I have versus the new Tiamat figure that's $400 that just came out with. You know, it's like, well, damn.
Yeah, that's where WotC's going to make all their money going forward is miniatures. Start releasing premium versions of it. Next thing you know, they'll start releasing like a limited edition one of 100s and stuff like that, and people will eat that shit up.
I honestly think they should do that from the digital standpoint. There has been a rumor going on that they're looking to make their own VTT.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I remember us
you know,
talking about this briefly.
if they do that, and then you have to basically buy the physical book, and then you have to buy the book on the VTT to make it run,
Mhm.
and then they start selling their own like mini packs. You
Yeah,
know, not. And there are a lot of really creative mini packs out there at like Roll20 that you can buy. You know,
yeah.
you could definitely they could definitely make a lot of money there. There's a lot more money there to be made.
With how big streaming D&D games online has become, it is the way forward for WotC. I bitch and complain a lot about them being money grubbing bastards, especially with Magic the Gathering and what they've been doing, and even with D&D. But that's just smart business. It just is. You can go right now onto Twitch and probably find hundreds, if not thousands, of D&D games that are being run right now.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, I mean, release your own virtual tabletop for it, and then just start releasing ways that you can make money on there.
that
Allow it to be used for free, but or a very limited fee, however you want to do it. Sell
that
all the
was
books, like you said, and then release packs of monsters and things like that.
the plan with fourth edition.
It was too early though.
It was a little too early, but they had And when you signed up for like the D&D like monthly fee, kind of just like how D&D Beyond has their monthly fee. You were given a map editor, and then you had to buy the individual map packs, the tile packs, to build out maps. And then you could just basically full screen that map, and then you could have, shown on your wall or on a TV or something like that. And the tech was really rudimentary, but it still worked. It worked pretty. I was using a map maker to make maps. I liked it a lot, but they didn't invest too heavily in that technology. Like they had it, it was working, but I don't think they had the response to it that they thought they were going to get because it was too early.
Yeah,
Um,
Critical Role. I don't even
yeah,
think it was around with fourth edition. If it
no,
was right sort of at the tail end of it.
yeah.
And like Critical Role wasn't that big when it started out. It took it a while.
So I think definitely now if they did that, it'd be a big success,
Yeah.
And there's so many different VTTs out there, like take Foundry for instance. They could take Foundry, pay them for their like a universal license for it, and then build it off of that, which is already
That's
is high is highly modulable. So like just run with it,
now that's not how these companies do. They wouldn't pay them to use it. They would buy the company.
Yeah, that would work too.
They would buy Foundry or create their own, and then just go from there. It makes more sense.
Yep. There's a couple Magic the Gathering cards people made for Jubilex.
Oh, are there? Oh, that's kind of cool. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm actually in the process of trying to put together a Magic the Gathering slime commander deck.
Oh.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't recall the commander's name, but he's blue, blue, green, black, and basically I'm just going to get every single slime that I can, or slime or ooze, and just throw them into the deck, including gelatinous cubes.
Oh yeah, Jealous Cube is great,
Oh yeah.
especially if you bounce them back and forth forever.
Yep. Oh yeah. So the original reason I even got onto Jubilex was the very last sentence of the the product description is those consumed by Jubilex are obliterated.
Yeah.
It got me to thinking about what happens to souls in Forgotten Realms specifically when they die. So from that word obliterated, to me that just means it's gone. It's gone forever. There's no resurrection, there's no anything. That soul is gone.
I believe. Yeah. I mean that's
And
my
it
understanding.
Yeah, I would have to actually read the description of Jubilex. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I think that's actually how that works. But just like in your standard D&D games, I know with Forgotten Realms they have their own sort of lore as to what happens when characters die.
Yeah.
And I was reading it earlier. Generally, they go to when somebody dies, their soul goes to the city of judgment, unless they have like a contract with a demon or devil or something. Then that's a whole other.
Or they just get sent there.
Yeah, yeah. But most people end up at the city of judgment where they are judged. It was kind of interesting because the atheist, those who do not believe in any of the gods, their souls are actually used to build a wall, which dissolves them over time. I would imagine us obliterating them also.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, just the whole
Oh.
thing. Like how much thought have you ever put into the post life for stuff like this?
Um. When it comes to like the D&D games, I just always just like kind of went with what they said, where like if you're killed by this weapon, you get sent to this layer of hell or whatnot.
Mhm.
And there's plenty of other ways you could basically be subjected to not pass into the appropriate afterlife and just wind up in Avernus or someplace else. Um, and when it comes to like people's souls, I just kind of always assumed like if they were um, not like with a god or aligned to a god, they weren't pulled to whatever appropriate plane that god resided in, and just went to the ethereal plane.
Oh well, yeah. That is the ethereal plane is one of the locations they could feasibly end up if they were like a ghost or something.
Yeah. So like, if they weren't atheists in Forgotten Realms, and it's really hard to be an atheist in Forgotten Realms when they
I know, right?
physically exist, yeah, gods aren't real. That dude is literally a god right there.
Yep.
He is literally creating matter out of nothing.
Yeah,
No, I don't believe he
yeah,
exists. He's just a
yeah,
high level wizard. He ends up on the ethereal plane.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
since you're now sort of moving into the creating your own content, and I know you had talked about creating your own campaign from scratch at some point. So this is things that
in
DMs don't always think about that they need to, is where do souls go, especially in your own created worlds. Where do they go when they die? What happens to them after death? You should think about this since you kill at least 2 players every game session.
no, maybe I
Okay, one and
not
a half.
two.
One and a half.
The average is less than one, but it's definitely greater than zero. Um, I just googled up like the use of the word obliterate in D&D 5e, and they use it for any meaning whatsoever. So, um, like Xanathar obliterates people with his disintegration ray. All
Yeah, okay.
right.
Well,
The
okay.
Terrask obliterates everything in its path.
All right. So, well, actually, obliteration with that isn't necessarily destruction of the soul. It's just all physical destruction. So that might be what Jubilex does. Just annihilates your body. There's nothing left.
That's what I think. I think that's what I think obliterate is in 5e. I mean, just looking at where they use it, the Demigorgon wants to obliterate his rivals, and the Terrask obliterates everything in its path. Xanathar obliterates people with his disintegration ray. So
Yeah, going off of disintegration, because I know that's what that does. It just destroys your physical body.
yeah. So what happened in the Al campaign? Um, the souls of the people. There's a point in time where you have to make an emerald to empower it, and that's basically going to create the Vorpal blade later. When they originally made the gem for like the first adventurers, the first adventuring group that fought the first Jabberwock, they basically had the elven versions of the Fomorians there already, and they were fine with helping out these adventurers because they didn't want the Jabberwock around either. So they had the queen basically order her subjects to basically be the sacrifices to empower and create the gem. So they needed, at very least, you needed one soul to create the gem, and that's just sacrifice on the altar, and that's it. Their blood flows through, and the gem gets created. But you could empower that gem's creation by sacrificing more people, and their souls would go into the gem as well. And where the gem gets formed, you could sacrifice an additional 4 people, but it wouldn't take their souls, it would just take their physical bodies and destroy their physical bodies to basically reinforce the gem holding in its power. So they had the best gem possible. They had the 4 up top, and they had the 4 with the 5 at the altar, and they had the better gem. And then my players only had the give me one, which is the Fomorian mage that's down there. He falls upon the altar, and you can use his blood to at least make the gem.
Mm-hmm.
But then you could also sacrifice some players or other people if you bring them along to reinforce and make the gem more powerful if you wanted to. So they had the Fomorian, and then they took a dead player's body and used that to help reinforce the gem up at the top level. And so this last session,
They're using their own people. All right.
this last session, when they were making the Vorpal blade, they had finally got everything crafted. And he stuck in the Forge Master stuck in the gem into the Vorpal blade to activate it, and you saw the Fomorian mage's soul appear and they get torn to shreds as it basically flowed into the blade. And then you also saw the previous wielder of the blade, her soul kind of appeared, and her soul got ripped apart and got pushed into the blade as well, because one of the things about wielding this blade is that you become eternally bound to it, and if it gets destroyed, you're stuck inside the blade forever. So, if it gets when he dies, his soul goes into the blade.
Yeah.
And then the elf cleric that died that they used to basically reinforce the gem, his body appeared out of the gem, and then was basically ground up into this red paste, this bright red paste mush, and coated the blade and the sword. And that's where the red on the Vorpal blade comes from, is the bodies that they use to sacrifice with it. And so they had the Vorpal blade made, just had to kill a bunch of souls and a bunch of people. And then the player took it, and now he's bound to it forever.
And now he's going to end up in it no matter how this goes.
I mean, technically, when he gets too old and dies,
Sooner or later, it might be 100 years, but
yep. The other thing that happened in the creation of the blade is I had this whole thing kind of like plotted out that they had to basically run and get different ingredients as the Forge Master was making the blade to kind of like add to the blade.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that he needs is a bar of his own steel.
Yeah.
And so the players have to run out of his room, get the steel, and then run back with it. And they essentially have like 2 rounds to do each thing. So they can't fumble around or the whole process will fail and the sword cannot get created.
Right.
So when they go to get the steel, there's no steel in the steel room because one of the other players in the group, because his PC is very impatient, he kind of kept that flaw from the Shadowfell. He basically took all the steel bars from the room and was just chucking them into the lava so you could hear them splash. So when the Forge Master needed 2 bars in order to create the Great Sword Vorpal Blade for the player, there wasn't any steel available. Just the one that he kept as a memento, because he kept one because he got surprised by a patrol, and he threw one of the bars at an undead dwarf and beamed him in the head with it. So he kept that one. So they couldn't get the 2 that they needed, but they still had the one that to at least make a longsword. At very least, you need 1 just to keep the longsword intact.
Right.
You need much more to get like different weapons.
So trick question for you here: if there had been 0 left, how would you have proceeded?
Scimitar.
I mean, well, if there's nothing to forge it with,
you take the old blade and he melts it down first.
Oh, okay.
And then he says, "There's not enough steel here. I need more. So go get me more."
They get a shank, just a shiv.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna keep it based off of what is listed in 5e. So in the official 5e setting, you can make a scimitar, great sword, or long sword.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another one, Vorpal.
So the Vorpal blade could be a few different blades, is what you're saying? In the official 5e rules. Okay.
Yeah, it can be. It can be those 3: a scimitar, long sword, or great sword. So if they get rid of all the steel, they'll get a scimitar.
Hey, at least it's something.
Yeah, at very least. So if everything fails, they get a scimitar. If they get at least 1 extra bar, it's a long sword. Or the 1 plus extra bars is a long sword. They get 2 extra bars plus it's a great sword. So they do that, and then they have to do a lot of other running back and forth into the other rooms to kind of grab the appropriate materials. That's all rolled randomly on the back end. And I got to make it a little bit more of a fun puzzle, but the base was laid out and worked well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they almost botched making a Vorpal sword.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I still love that was his flaw, and he did this without any knowledge of that being a requirement for them to make this thing. Yeah, like no information. He's just like, "Hey, I'm bored. I'm just gonna take the steel and start chucking it in the lava."
Part is too is when they got to the museum area, and they got all the cool magic weapons that the Forge Master made out of all the museum housings. He starts chucking all the armor stands and sword stands and display cases into the lava to watch it all burn.
What alignment is this guy?
chaotic something or other.
Yeah, definitely. Leaning towards the heavy chaotic.
I mean, that's what I would do.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is
I
definitely not what I would do, but I get it.
I challenge any human being to be in a room full of things and have lava just outside, and not start chucking shit into the lava to see what happens.
I'm gonna chuck something in it. I'm not going to lie. I would probably
Yeah,
start, assuming I'm a D&D character, I'm probably going to start with some coins in my purse. After that, if there's bars of steel around, I'll probably chuck one or two. I'm not chucking a whole stack of them. It
yeah.
just seems rude. It doesn't belong to me.
I will say this: if you don't think that you would be the person to ever chuck anything into the lava, just go to a Japanese steakhouse and see how many people throw ice onto the grill before the cook gets there.
Wait, people do that?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Why?
Because the cook shows up and he cleans the grill before it's used. Okay,
Yeah,
but if you take but the waitress turns it on and it becomes very hot very quickly,
right.
and then the chef shows up like 15 minutes later. So if you take a piece of ice and you just slide it across the grill, it just bubbles and bounces everywhere, and goes. Psst.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch. I mean, I do it every time I go there.
I have a stove with pots and pans. I can do that shit at home. I would never even it would never even cross my mind to do that when I was out in public eating somewhere.
Well, I do it all the time.
Well, at least we know your alignment is chaotic something.
I do it in front of my mother and my wife and my daughter. I'm like, hey, Maddie, watch this. Meh. And she
Yeah,
cheers.
that's fair. I don't have kids. Honestly, if I had a kid, I would probably do that. Yeah. Yep. I am the bad influence. So
Yeah, I mean, that's me.
yeah.
So, I don't remember how we got here. I don't know how we got the Japanese steakhouse is what started this conversation.
We were talking about the Vorpal blade and throwing shit into lava.
Before that,
Before that, we were talking about where do souls go.
okay. And before that,
Uh, Forgotten Realms sucking on their lore.
no, after that.
I think Jubilex.
Oh, Jubilex, yeah.
Yeah.
Where's my Nerf Vorpal blade?
Yeah,
Come on.
honestly, yeah, they should make something like that. That would be cool. They should definitely do that.
We made a Nerf Vorpal blade. It still cut people. We don't understand it.
You ever? Oh God, what was that? There was a movie came out in the '80s. One of these terrible sci-fi fantasy films. The sci fantasy films, and it was a blade, like a sword that had 4 blades on it, and the guy could aim it at something and it would shoot a blade out. We need something like that. Nerf could make one like that. It's got 4 blades on it, and just each one shoots a foam blade at somebody.
Oh, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Oh, I know something I want to talk about too. I talked about this on the stream with Reverend Panda, and I think I mentioned it to you. And my player already recognized the fault in this in of itself. I think I've asked our other DM friends about this. The Vorpal sword, as it is written in 5th edition, okay, the rules as written. It says when you attack a creature that has at least 1 head with this weapon, and you roll 20 on the attack roll, you cut off one of the creature's head.
Mm-hmm.
The creature dies if it cannot survive without the lost head. A creature is immune to this effect if it is immune to slashing damage, doesn't have or need a head, has legendary actions, or the GM decides the creature is too big for its head to be cut off with a weapon.
Yeah.
Such a creature instead takes an extra 6d8 slashing damage from the hit. Okay? Now, if you look at the Jabberwock, as he is written in 5th edition, okay, the Jabberwock is a legendary creature. He is a dragon.
Okay.
He's typically chaotic evil. He has legendary actions.
Okay.
So because of this, the Vorpal blade cannot cut off the Jabberwocky's head on a critical hit. But it does maintain the damage vulnerability to slashing from a Vorpal sword.
Right.
I think that personally, the legendary actions rule should not apply to the Jabberwock. I think there should be an extra sentence in here that says if the Jabberwock is crit by a Vorpal blade, its head gets cut off immediately and bypasses the legendary actions rule.
as it is your campaign, you absolutely could do that. And honestly, that makes sense. Yeah, that you always use the Vorpal blade to kill the Jabberwocky. Everybody knows
Right.
this.
Yeah. It's just really weird. I mean, I guess slashing from a Vorpal sword, I mean, at the end of the day, if you hit him with it, he's taking double damage, okay?
Yeah.
And then even if you crit him, it's still 2d8 plus 68, so
Yeah.
8d8 damage. It's a fireball every hit. He doesn't have a lot of hit points.
Yeah, actually, just from reading the Vorpal sword, here's one that's interesting to me. A creature is immune to this effect if it is immune to slashing damage. Now, the last sentence is such a creature instead takes an extra 68 slashing damage. If you're immune to slashing damage, how do you take an extra 6d8 slashing damage?
No, it says that this weapon ignores resistance to slashing damage.
Oh,
And it's
okay. I missed that part. Yeah, all right.
yeah.
There we go.
So what it gets
Well,
is
resistance and immunity are not the same thing.
right. So if a creature is immune to the effect of slashing damage, okay, the attack still hits with a Vorpal blade, essentially.
I,
The Vorpal blade should also say that the weapon ignores resistance and immunity to slashing damage.
yes, it should. This is poorly written, and as it's written, I would not allow something immune to slashing damage to take that extra 68. Yeah, just because of how that's written.
Yeah.
I know that's not the intention, but that is that is the effect as it's written.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird blade. Plus, if you look at the actual picture for it, it's not a very good longsword. The crossguard would stab your forearms.
Yeah, it looks very unbalanced too. It's not a good sword.
Yeah, it's very weird. The Master Blade it kind of looks like the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
you know,
I'm guessing is that the longsword version or the great sword? The
that's the
handle,
longsword version.
yeah, the handle doesn't look long enough for a great sword.
Nah, I'm pretty sure that's the Buster Sword. It's a two-handed version.
That is definitely not the Buster sword. Definitely not. Well,
I'm
making
Cloud. I can spin this around with my hands. Just a hand. It spins. I
Cloud.
I can't believe it started like a bajillion. I mean, I thought I was creative when I came up with this very large sword thing when I was a child, you
Mhm.
know? And then when I saw Cloud with it, I was like, God, that's stupid. You know, big swords like that are stupid. Um, and then I see Berserk, and then I'm like, all right, big swords are in again, I guess. And
Yeah,
then you're
little.
like, they just ripped off Cloud, and then you realize, no, everybody ripped off Berserk.
I mean, I honestly I don't even think it would be Berserk. I mean, here you are as a child thinking you're super creative and you made these giant swords, and little did you know Japan had done this probably since the 70s. I don't know what the first anime manga would have been that did that, but it was probably earlier than Berserk. Bastard,
Maybe,
maybe.
maybe. One of the first characters I ever created in my head, and this was before Final Fantasy VII came out. Um, but the other Final Fantasy that existed, so knights were a thing.
Oh yeah,
So one of the characters that I created was a great sword wielding hero. Okay, and he also had a pistol that he would use. Okay,
yeah,
essentially, he wasn't. It was very much based off of me. As I'm a big dude, I am not going to chase you. I will fight with you, engage you with melee combat as much as I can. But if you're running, I'm just going to pull out the pistol and shoot you Indiana Jones style. Okay,
yeah.
and so his gun became like this just big freaking Ruger Red Hawk, like 8-chambered revolver that basically just shot basically like this massive, huge shell at people.
Right.
Slow. You could probably block it, but it's gonna still kill you from the bludgeoning damage from the force. Like that was the intent, and I never even heard of guts into my 20s.
I had never heard of it until I met you and uh, Gula. Like
Yeah,
you guys were the first ones to tell me about it. And
then what is Guts? This big, huge, heavy plate mill wielding giant greatsword MFer with a cannon on his arm. So it's like great minds, I guess. That's what it is. That's what I'm saying. Great minds think alike.
fair enough. Yeah, I had never seen Berserk. I still have never seen Berserk, but I at least know enough about it just because of you guys.
Oh, Berserk is great, man. It's
Definitely not for kids, though. Definitely not for kids.
It's definitely not for kids.
Just like
And
this podcast.
if you watch it on Netflix, you can find it on Netflix, and you watch it, you're not going to like the first one. It's very long and very slow. That's intentional. It's supposed to be that way, and it picks up a bit in the second one, but it's still very long and very slow. And then it has a good climax. So give it a shot. Just watch them all. Trust me.
So yeah, there's another manga I'm looking at right now that did the giant sword thing. Miura Said the Dragon Slayer, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
It's almost certainly earlier, but I'll do more research. I kind of want to know the answer to this now. Who was the first giant sword thing? Because it's fucking everywhere now.
Well, yeah, it's everywhere now. And like I knew a lot of like medieval history and medieval fantasy, and it's really not in there at all. Maybe because swords were so prevalent back in that day and age that they understood bigger, heavier swords was not the way to go.
Yeah.
So everyone went quick, with a rapier or smaller.
I mean, there were absolutely big ass swords for real. Yeah, there were the flambeurs, the claymore. Like there's plenty of them real, but even then the blades weren't like these massive blocks. Which is
and they were made for a very specific purpose and abandoned very quickly for smaller weapons.
Yeah, usually.
Once the cavalry lost their horses, you don't keep fighting with a flamberg. You throw it away.
You pull out the long sword or the short sword or the spear or something else. And
that's why the gladius is such a great sword for its day and age, because it was small, light, fast, could still parry bigger weapons and smaller weapons.
Mm-hmm. But anyway,
it's overpowered. It's got +5 to hit.
I know, right? Yeah, all gladius, they're OP. Damn short swords.
Even that rusted one they found just a little while ago.
Yeah, I wish they had something in D&D to give short swords like extra attacks or something.
I mean,
I guess they do if you dual wielding. You get that extra one.
Yeah, but everyone does the same thing they do with everything else, and just kind of like pick up the feat. We can use a long sword and a short sword, or a rapier and a short sword, and just kind of cheat it out there.
Unless you're a rogue, and then you don't bother, because if you miss with the first attack, then you just attack with the dagger or the short sword in the offhand and still get your sneak attack bonus. So
yeah, there should definitely be a feat out there. It's called Shank, where you just basically you have to grapple the opponent and then use an action to attack the opponent, and then if you succeed, you get 60 attacks.
All right, level up 5e. We're talking to you. Make this happen.
And they all do one damage. They all do one damage.
Yep. And that's how you ruin Dungeons and Dragons forever. Not because it's too overpowered, because nobody wants to roll 60 dice. Actually, it'd be 120 dice because 60 attack rolls. Well, no, if it does one, it would just be 60. But either way, it's too many dice. All right, I think we're done. We've done it all this week.
Have we?
Yes.
Craig is still here.
Bye, Craig. Get out of here. Go get.
Bye, Jay. Bye, myself, Christopher.
Don't wave your hands at me, Geark. I'm watching you.
We never actually did our intro.
Oh, well, I was Grumpy Dungeon Masters Jay.
And I was Grumpy Dungeon Master Christopher.
And we'll see you next time on the Grumpy Dungeon Masters.
Watch my stream on Saturday because it's the finale and I want a lot of people there.
Craig.
So long, the grumpiness has been your friend. Now go and spread anger through D&D. No, don't do that. Be happy, be friendly, be awesome. but can maintain the boiling hate that inside your heart. I don't know, buddy. I'm rambling at this point. Shut me up and end this podcast.